Oh, hello there, my fellow walking down mid enjoyers at minute 5 because my team are feeding. And today we're going to be benchmarking Dota 2 using the RTX 3060 Ti with the Ryzen 7 7800X 3D with 32GB of DDR5 6000 MHz RAM. That's right, that's always a mouthful, guys, but welcome. Alright, and for this benchmark, I'm going to be taking you into a replay. Now, this replay is how old? This replay is like 6 months old at this point, but the reason why I'm taking you into this replay is it is incredibly intensive. There is some incredibly intensive team fights in this replay, so yeah, I'm not gonna mess around and take you to some weak, low spell casting, easy to run team fights. We're going into the most intensive team fights you can see so that you can actually see just how well this performs in the worst team fights, essentially. So, alright, and to get us started here, we're going to be playing at 10... Well, we're not playing, but we're going to be benchmarking at 1080p using the Ultra settings, as you can see. I've even got the shadow quality set to Ultra. Bearing in mind, that setting destroys your FPS, so I'll show you what that does as well. But yeah, these are the settings we're going to start with. Let's go ahead and jump on in. Alright, and just to get us started here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what the Ultra Shadows does, because I would personally turn it off. So with Ultra Shadows turned on, we're at about 350 FPS here. Take a look at the scene, and let me go ahead and turn that down to high. Barely does anything. The graphics are almost identical, and yet we've just got an extra 90 FPS out of nowhere. So we're playing with Ultra Shadows set to high, not to Ultra. So technically, you could be, it's not actually maximum setting. Shh. It is maximum settings. You're not going to play with Ultra, right? 440 FPS. And before we get to the most intensive team fights, let me just go ahead and show you what a normal kind of a team fight looks like. This is not what we're going to be benchmarking here. We're going to be skipping much further down into the replay and showing you the most intensive kind of team fights you'll see. But these are some weaker team fights here. I'm going to quickly show you. Don't mind my camera. I'm not very good at controlling cam on replays, but this is a really basic, easy to run team fight, dropping into the 300 FPS range. Not that many spells going on. I've seen a lot of benchmarkers and a lot of people thinking this is like good for benchmarking. It's not that intensive. It's really easy to run, like 300 FPS. Yes, sure, everybody wasn't casting spells at the same time there, but let me skip us to the most intensive team fights you're going to be seeing in Dota. So this is what we're going to be benchmarking today. This is a way more intensive team fight. We're 74 minutes into the game here. We've got a lot of spellcasters. I'm playing Venomancer, so I've got a lot of Plague Wards. The more Plague Wards and stuff you have, Illusion Heroes and Plague Wards and anything that like spawns something in is really intensive in this game. And so this match is actually, like, in this team fight in particular, it gets really intensive. So let's go ahead and play the team fight. Gonna reset my FPS here. And we're going to be able to see what kind of frames have dropped down to. As you can see, the replay is a bit broken, but that's alright. It doesn't matter. But it's not that intensive yet, but it starts to pick up. Once all the spells start going, 230, 240, still really high refresh rate. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. It might not look that intensive, but there's a lot happening. We just got a frame drop, 200 FPS. The 1% lows are really low because that one frame drop just absolutely destroyed it. But yeah, there's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of particle effects. There's a ton of Plague Wards down. And we're not dropping usually from like 240 here at 1080p Ultra settings, which is what you want to see. We are CPU bound in this scenario, and this is why I brought you to this team fight, because Dota 2 is more CPU intensive than GPU intensive, especially in big late game team fights. Look at how much is on the screen. There's like 10 plus Plague Wards or something. There's so many spells being cast, multiple team fights going on in separate areas of the base. There's a lot going on here. And we were for the most part on average at around 240 FPS. 220, 210. It is dropping, but it's staying above 200 for the most part. Like, yeah. Really good. Team fight's pretty much over. Well, it's not over. This team fight lasts a very long time. It's a really drawn out team fight of us just basically buying time for our carry to respawn so Bristle can't end the game. But yeah, it's pretty much over. Team fight's pretty much over here. We saw pretty much averages. So the averages were around 240 FPS, 1% lows. It did drop that a couple times, like really, really low, but that's just going to happen in Dota occasionally. But I think we can all agree this is an incredibly intensive team fight. If anybody who plays Dota, which I'm assuming is most of you, for any decent period of time, knows that this kind of team fight is vastly more performance intensive than a standard team fight. Like, there's so much going on. So that's why we're benchmarking this team fight. So if it wasn't this team fight, a normal team fight, you'll probably see 300, 350 FPS with this 1080p Ultra. But in these bigger team fights, and you can get more intensive team fights than this, but this is the replay that I've got. So, you know, this is what we're using. I don't have another replay that's more intensive. And believe me, I watch over my replays, and this is the most intensive one that I have. But with that out of the way, let's... All right, and here we are. We're at 1440p. We are using pretty much ultra settings. Again, shadow quality turned off from ultra because it literally just destroys your FPS. Like, the ultra setting takes like 25% of your frames away. It's actually crazy. Don't use it. Not 25 frames, 25% of your frames. It's an insanely intensive setting to use. Yeah, as you can see here at 1440p, standard gameplay, you're going to be pretty much GPU bound now. I know it says 93, 94... which is pretty much GPU bound for Dota 2, but yeah, it is dropping. It's close to being completely GPU bound in normal gameplay here at like 280. So let's go to a normal team fight. All right, pretty standard team fight started here. I did reset my FPS counter. This is just a standard team fight that's happening. Not everybody's casting spells at the same time. FPS is dropping here. We are GPU bound. FPS did drop to like 190 there, but yeah, with a standard team fight here. Oh my god, Bristle is just melting. Jesus. But he's got a Bloodstone, everybody. This was the Bloodstone Bristle meta. I don't know if it's still a thing, but it was very annoying. And yeah, that's a standard team fight. So averages around 230. Let's get to a more intensive team fight. And now we're back at the most intensive team fight in this entire match. And one of the most intensive team fight scenarios you're going to run into in Dota 2 itself. So yeah. I would expect we will drop GPU usage here in this team fight, but I'm not sure. There's a lot of stuff being cast again. It's literally the same replay, so, you know. 180, 190, 200 FPS. We did drop some frames on average, but, you know, we basically dropped like 40 or 50 FPS here. On average, or about 40 FPS we're losing compared to 1080p Ultra. Which is not that bad, in all honesty. We're still at like 200 FPS on average in this team fight. It is very much start and stop, or stop and start, this team fight. So, there is a lot going on. Ooh, down to 170 there over here in this team fight, which is still totally fine. You do need an incredibly powerful CPU for Dota 2, in all honesty. Dota 2, I keep saying it, but Dota 2 is way more CPU intensive than it is GPU. Our RAM usage here in Dota is quite high. As you can see, we're using about 17 gigs right now. So if you're still using a 16 gig card and maybe you're dropping frames and stuff, that might be the reason, right? You might be seeing a lot of stuttering and stuff in big team fights. Maybe, if you're using 16 gigs. Because of that. Ideally, you need more than that, clearly, for Dota 2. Or, yeah, pretty much. But the team fight is pretty much over here. Averages were around 200, 210 FPS, 1% lows at about 120. So 1% lows this time are a little bit better, but that's maybe because our actual FPS was lower in general because we're at 1440p. And we were pretty much, for the most part there, we were GPU bound. So we'll try minimum settings here too. Alright, now we're at 4K in Dota 2. It does change my game to 60 Hz when I go to 4K, but it doesn't matter, I'm not playing. But as you can see, still at Ultra. Let's see some normal gameplay, and then we'll try out some team fights. So we'll look at some team fights afterwards. Let's, actually, this is a team fight, so we'll actually watch this. So this is going to be a team fight here. Let's reset my 1% lows, there we go. So at 4K in a standard kind of team fight, that's less intensive. We're getting like 140 FPS here with the 3060 Ti. So for Dota 2, like I did say, or I do keep saying that it's mostly about the CPU, and that's true here. As you can see, the 3060 Ti in Dota 2, even in team fights or smaller team fights, is able to get a average of around 140 FPS during the actual team fight. Now, in normal gameplay, as you can see, we're still GPU bound, and we're getting around 180 or 160 to 200 FPS at 4K, which is pretty playable for Dota 2. I've seen some benchmarkers saying Dota 2 is playable at 60 FPS. I wouldn't agree with that. I mean, if you play at 60 Hertz, then yeah, sure. But I've even seen some benchmarkers who clearly do not play Dota 2 saying that Dota is playable at 40 FPS in team fights, and that's just not true, guys. You want at least 60 at minimum for team fights, and ideally 100 plus, in all honesty, which is going to require a pretty beefy CPU. This whole thing about, oh, it's dropping to 30 FPS, which is okay if you're casual, like, not really. Dota 2 is not a casual game. You need good frame rate. 30, 40 FPS is not good enough for team fights, guys. I'm sorry. You need at least 60. And if you play it above 60 Hertz, or you play it above like 120 Hertz, 144 Hertz, you want over 100 FPS at least in team fights. Otherwise, it's going to feel awful. And if it's feeling awful, you can't team fight properly. But with that out of the way, let's go to the most intensive team fight in this replay. So it started here. I'm just going to reset my FPS. So why are we on player view? Free camera, there we go. So this is the most intensive team fight in the replay, and also probably the most intensive one you'll see, or one of the most intensive team fights you can actually be in. Ooh, 90 FPS. Does still look smooth, but I'm not playing it, so it could be a different story if you're playing it. 1% loads are still above 60, so that's quite nice there to see. A lot happening here. Obviously going to be GPU bound at 4K. No one's expecting anything else. Well, Bristleback still alive. Lots of spells going on here. Should I try and cast this like I was an actual caster? Man, I'm so out of the loop with Dota. I've not played it for a few months, but yeah, my god. Looks like Lena's gonna go ahead and E-Blade the Storm Spirit. Tidehunter trying to use a physical attack damage while he's E-Bladed, wondering why the damage isn't going on him. Bristleback getting absolutely trolled by the two supports. It's crazy. I think we kept him here for about a minute or something, and he was, because, yeah. I have a Yule's, a sheep stick, and I've got this Book of Shadows, so like Bristle gets completely disabled. Rubik's also got a Wind Waker, a Force Staff, and can pick him up. And he can stun him with this. Oh, it was so funny, but anyways, it's besides the point. This guy literally could not kill the base. He was here for about a minute during the team fight. Oh my god. But anyways, yeah. Averages of around 110 to 120 FPS in that entire engagement. 1% loads of 70 plus. That's totally fine for 4K Ultra, in my opinion. Like, I think that's pretty good. Let's try out the competitive settings, or low settings, basically, and we'll see what that's like. Alright, so now we're going to benchmark Dota 2 using performance/competitive settings, depending on who you are. I've basically set everything to the lowest, other than the game render resolution. We're going to leave that at 100%. And so we'll see what kind of FPS you can get in Dota 2 if all you want is just a competitive advantage. This is how I used to play for years. Even when I could play with good graphics, I still played with low settings because I just got used to it from older computers. But anyways, let's jump in. For this performance benchmark, we're not going to be testing normal gameplay and normal team fights. We're just going to go straight into the most intensive team fight, because we might as well. This is what we're all here for, right? Let's pull this back a little bit. So here with the lowest settings in the game, we're still, for the most part, GPU bound here. Yes, at times the GPU usage is dropping down and being underutilized, but for the most part, still completely GPU bound in a lot of this fight. Like right now, yes, we are dropping down when the spells are actually being cast. Okay, maybe not. Maybe we are actually quite CPU bound for a lot of this fight. Yeah, it seems that way. But we're still getting really good FPS, like 280 plus. This is kind of nuts, right? Averages of 280 in that entire fight, and 1% lows of 110. Can't really complain about that. And as you can see, when there's no actual team fights going on, it's just kind of like standard late game play. There's still a lot happening here in terms of the creeps and stuff, and you know, heroes, and still using all their spells and everything. We're getting like 350 FPS, and we are obviously CPU bound at this point. And with that, guys, that's going to be it for today. I'm not going to benchmark minimum settings 1440p or minimum settings 1080p, because the minimum 4K benchmark is going to be pretty much the same for 1440p and 1080p because we are CPU bound, so it makes no difference if we go to a lower resolution to use minimum settings, right? So yeah, that's going to do it for today. If you found any value in this video, please go ahead and leave me a like, helps the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already, and leave me a comment with some suggestions for benchmarks in the future. Until next time, I've been Voda, the FPS tester, and take care of yourself and goodbye for now.